Hello, everyone. Here we are at session four, four or five, four, I think, of the Collective Imagination Practice Community. And I'd really like to welcome all of you, and particularly the person who's going to lead our session, Anna Rose Kerr. And she is a creative and a freelancer and an enthusiast of Web3 and its potential for collective imagination. And, you know, for me, who's a beekeeper, that's just kind of a bit scary. And I don't really know what any of that's about. And I'm hoping it won't turn out to be something dreadful. And so this session is really for the likes of me, as well as for the likes of all of you that know an awful lot more about this, really thinking about how does some of the language founded in quite capitalist narratives reinforce potentially some of the fears that folks like I have, and in some way limit us from really entering into the imaginative and collective potential of Web3. So Anna's gonna help us to think metaphorically into this topic, and to get excited about it. So I'm gonna hand over to you, Anna.
Thank you. Let me just pull up my screen. Just going to have it like this so I can see you all. So the title of this talk, The Metaphors We Organize By, is essentially what we're going to get into today, and we're going to hopefully have quite a productive imagination session towards the end of this, which should take up a significant bit of the hour. But first, I will need to explain some concepts so we're all kind of in the room together. I also have COVID, so apologies if my voice is a bit croaky. I really appreciate as well you guys helping keep the energy up by interacting as we go. If you have questions as we go along, please type them in the chat. And equally, if you see a question in the chat that you know the answer to, for example, I'm going to talk about some of the communities I'm in. I know there are a bunch of people on this call who are also in those communities. So if you know the answer to the question, go ahead and answer that. And to begin with, just want a thumbs up. So if you go to the reaction box and put a thumbs up if you feel like you're quite comfortable explaining how a flock of geese decide which formation they fly in. So who decides like who's going to fly at the front of that formation? And you don't need to explain that. But put a thumbs up if you're like, I kind of get how geese work. Possibly no one. I can't see any thumbs up. Who here feels like they could explain what a decentralized autonomous organization is, or a DAO, and could quite comfortably, again, not going to have to explain what it is, but put a thumbs up if you feel quite comfortable.
Oh, I already do that, and yeah, I'm pretty comfortable about explaining. But are we going to do it right now, or just okay? Cool. I'm good with that.
Amazing. Just getting a feeling from the room of like who here is like coming from the world of geese and bees, and who here is coming from the world of DAOs. And hopefully by the end of this, we both have like a fairly robust understanding of both of those concepts, but also I think importantly, how they relate to each other. Because I do think this is, I guess, the thesis of this talk, that by understanding some of the concepts of Web3 through the metaphors of nature, we can hopefully entice more people to join us in building in this world. So we're going to start with a little imagination exercise. You can close your eyes if you would like, or turn your cameras off if you feel more comfortable having your eyes closed with your cameras off. And I want you to take a deep breath in, and imagine a group that you feel really connected to. So this could be a friendship group. It might be a group of people you practice your religion with, an activist group, or a charity that you're part of. Maybe it is a DAO. Who is in that group, and what is your role within that group? I want you to think as well about like what it's like to make a decision in that group. Is that something that fills you with hope and excitement? Is it something that fills you with frustration at times? Is there a particular person that's kind of leading those decisions, or is that something you're kind of coming to in a slightly more autonomous way? Just hold on to that feeling for a minute. and you can all open your eyes and turn your cameras back on. What you have essentially just imagined is a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. And a guy called Nathan Schneider says that friendships were the original DAOs. So hopefully these concepts that we're talking about today are not like super scary and super technical, because I think we all are part of groups of people that kind of organize in ways that don't have CEOs at the top of them, for example. And this is the concept that we're going to expand on today, looking at how people come together to make decisions as a collective. And the reason that I'm really passionate about this, and particularly thinking about how Web3 technology can upscale these kind of groups, is because of one particular group that I'm in called East London Waterworks Park. We try our best to be decentralized. We are at times autonomous, but we are essentially a group of around 200 volunteers trying to buy this Blythe of concrete between Walthamstow and Hatley Marshes in East London. We have raised actually over £2 million through crowdfunding and philanthropic loans, so a huge amount of money into this project. And we organise in a sociocratic way, which means we have frequent online meetings, and we talk things out until we reach a point of consent. So we're seeking consent rather than consensus. And that works incredibly well for people who can be online and can come to those meetings. But it's hard to imagine what this park really could be like, you know, what a natural swimming pond could feel like for certain groups of people who would need to use a forest school in this space, without really involving the entire community. And one of the big challenges that we continually look at is how to involve more of the community in that decision-making process. And I really believe that Web3 technology is like one way in which this really physical piece of land in East London could be completely owned by a community, run by a community, and feel anarchist and separate from councils and governments and structures. But the language of Web3 is super scary to a bunch of the amazing ecologists and people that are working on this project. And so my selfish reason for us doing this imagination exercise is to see if we can find ways of talking about this technology that isn't rooted in capitalism. But I guess the big question to begin with is, what is Web3? Some of you will know what this is, others might be one of the first times you've kind of come across that, and that's why you've joined this call. I'm going to give quite a simple explanation. I think the easiest way to understand Web3 is it is the third chapter of the internet. So the first chapter of the internet, the World Wide Web, invented by Tim Berners-Lee, kind of came into its own in the mid-1990s, sorry. For me, it was a lot of Neopets. My best friend and I built a website that you could visit by typing in an IP address that would ping a server in her dad's office. And there were a lot of kind of one-to-one interactions on this early internet. And then as computer power progressed, it was possible to stream videos much quicker. We had the invention of the iPhone, so suddenly you had the internet in a very interactive way on your phone. This thing called Web 2.0 came along in the mid 2000s, this is COVID kicking in, mid 2000s, Web 2.0. And I think we're kind of still stuck in this world a little bit. You might think of this as the internet of the cats, because suddenly it was very easy to put cat videos all over the internet, and a lot of people did that. And the promise of Web 2.0 was that it was going to be decentralized, and instead of having a dad who knows how to build you a server, you could just create a MySpace page or a Facebook page, and you could speak to tons of people without needing the kind of coding skills that the World Wide Web first kind of made you need to learn. But there's obviously loads of problems, and a lot of them are to do with the corporations that own these servers that kind of hold all this information. So in the mid 2010s, something came along which is now kind of known as Web3. So third chapter, and you might have noticed that these are kind of coming in waves of every decade. So we're actually coming up on due for the fourth iteration of the internet. not going to get into what that is today, because I think Web3 is still quite a new concept to a lot of people. And what it means is that we're trying to build this world that is truly decentralized and no longer has intermediaries like Twitter or Amazon or eBay running the servers, but instead we have all-to-all communication through this internet. And probably if you've never heard much about Web3, the one thing that you will know about is Bitcoin. And this is, I guess, typical of kind of the capitalist ways in which this technology is being used and is definitely being talked about. Bitcoin at its simplest is just a currency that exists on a software. And because there is this potential to make a huge amount of money, or certainly there was, probably not at the minute, with technologies like Bitcoin, loads of hyper-capitalists kind of flooded into this space and are doing some things that I think we would probably all agree are not necessarily great for the world. So you get these headlines about NFTs are causing a climate crisis, or this one, which I really hate, Bitcoin miners reviving a coal plant in order to make money. So there's lots of applications of this technology which make it into the media, which are not necessarily serving some of the dreams that some of the people in this room might have. But I think it's important that we separate the uses of this technology from what the actual underlying infrastructure is. So what is blockchain technology? I think people can get a little bit confused around what blockchain technology is, or I think there's confusion created around it because people try and explain it like the software that it runs on, or like the quite dense technology and the theory that it runs on. So we're going to begin with a first metaphor, which is, Hannah, you'll be pleased to learn, a beehive. And before all you British ecologists come at me about how most British bees don't live in hives, I grew up in New Zealand and my dad kept bees in hives. I know a fair bit about honey. I could probably have a conversation about the ethics of bee farming, but I could not tell you, literally do not know anything about the chemical components that make up honeycomb. I don't know, and I don't need to know. And I think for this conversation, we don't need to know exactly how blockchain technology works, but it's important to understand kind of what it does and why people use it. So if we think of the honeycomb as the blockchain in this metaphor, it's made up of these many interlinked blocks, and this technology is the thing on which the bees come and build their honey, or in which a DAO comes and builds its community and makes its decision. So a blockchain, much like a beehive, operates in a decentralized manner where no single entity or bee has complete control. Individual bees work together to achieve the common goal of, in this instance, making honey. Similarly, blockchain participants collaborate to validate and record transactions, contributing to the overall functioning of this entire network of these little blocks, contributing to the security and transparency of their network. So every bee in that network can see what every other bee in that network is doing. And no one bee can come in and decide, fuck honey. And similarly, no one in the blockchain can come in and completely disrupt an entire blockchain. And that is because there is a lot of like technical encryption and cryptographic techniques that are used to secure data, much like the honeycomb itself. It safeguards its contents from external threats. But within this metaphor, we are not the bees. We are actually the flowers. And the bees are something that we can think of, or are called, I told you this gets very capitalist, called wallets in Web3. So we rely on this network of bees or wallets interacting with the hive for our pollen to be distributed. And in the world of blockchain, individuals have these wallets that store information or tokens, and what we might think of as nectar in the blockchain. So these wallets or these bees play this kind of crucial role as intermediaries on the network, just as a bee plays an intermediary role between a flower and the honeycomb. if you've never seen a wallet in practice and you don't quite know what I'm talking about, I'm going to show you mine. This is what my wallet looks like on the Ethereum network, which is one of the more popular blockchains. You can see it's this really long hash of numbers and letters at the top here. And you can see in here that I have a very small amount of the currency, ETH, which is worth around $15 US. I also have a bunch of assets in my wallet, not a bunch, actually very few on the Ethereum network. And these are tokens. Some of them are tokens that can be exchanged for like tokens, and some of them are non-fungible tokens or NFTs, which just means they can't be exchanged for like. And to explain how these work, I'm going to show you a few. First, going to put some water. So the first one is this one here called Love. On the day that Russia declared war in Ukraine, I joined a DAO called Ukraine DAO, where within about 48 hours we raised, I think, about $8 million that went directly to people in Ukraine. And at the time, many Ukrainians had their bank accounts frozen. So moving that amount of money that quickly with traditional banks or traditional charities just wouldn't have been possible. The decentralized nature of blockchain technology means that it's possible to do these things in a way that traditional capitalist systems just don't do. And the Love token that I have no longer holds like a monetary value. I mean, it does. As you can see, it's very, very small. And that's because that money has gone to Ukraine. And the Love lives in my wallet as a token of my contribution. And even if I gave all those tokens away, the transparent nature of the blockchain means that forever, the Russian government will be able to see that I contributed to this resistance. So that is like an immutable contract that lives forever and is transparent forever. So I think the first fun feature of Web3 is that it's possible to secure like really significant amounts of money, time, skills, and experience without the need for a middleman, a bank, a charity. And these contributions are automatically acknowledged. But within a community, it's also really nice to acknowledge each other. We don't always just want to be acknowledged by a robot. So I'm going to share how tokens can help with that with another DAO that I very recently joined, thanks to Hannah introducing me to Caitlin, who is part of Radar, and Caitlin is also running the Decentralized Creative. So hopefully we'll hear a bit more about Radar in this community over the next few months. But within Radar is this token called Signal, which you can send backwards and forwards as a sign of appreciation to other people on the DAO for things they've done or conversations that you've had. So you can see Fancy tipped me 5 Signal, and then I tipped those 5 Signal to Caitlin. And again, these tokens do not necessarily hold monetary value. It's not like you can cash out, but they are a way of showing appreciation within the community. And I think it's important, and we won't get into this, but ask away in the chat if you want to hear more about this, that Radar do use other tokens that do have monetary value as a way of distributing the value that is created by that DAO to people that have real world bills to pay. And I think that's also another interesting feature of this technology, that, you know, often charity groups only attract people that can spend the time or resources on this stuff. Whereas if you can distribute a transparent treasury, it's possible for other people to join. So Web3 encourages meaningful community interactions and takes the hierarchy out of that recognition, where communities can kind of share the recognition amongst each other. The other feature that these Signal have is that you can use them to vote on decisions that the DAO makes. And I'm going to share one more example of a DAO that I think has quite an interesting governance structure. That is Archive. Excuse this massive photo of my face. So Archive is a DAO that is aiming to build a decentralized museum, which means that we buy amazing bits of artwork, but we decide as a community on which bits of artwork we are going to buy. So the hypothesis is that the Smithsonian Museum would be much more interesting if it was curated by people actually going to the Smithsonian. And the way that we vote for stuff in Archive is we have these points called archive points. and you can acquire them by interacting in the community. So you can see I've got a bunch for voting in polls, which results in real acquisitions of real artwork. I got some for suggesting an acquisition, and we used to get them for saying good morning or GM to each other. I don't think we do anymore, but there's like little ways in which tokens can, again, like create that feeling of community, but then have really tangible results, giving people more power to vote for stuff the more involved that they are. So in that way, Web3 encourages you and rewards you to contribute your experience and knowledge to decisions within the community. So I think hopefully this is like an understanding of like some of the ways that a token can be used. There are loads of other ways, but the big question for today is, why are tokens points and currency and power that is accumulated? And I think the reason for that is because it's really easy to understand points being accumulated or currency being accumulated when we live in capitalism. That's like a metaphor that everyone immediately gets because it's something that we live. But with Web3, there is this like amazing potential to create absolutely anything. Tokens could be literally anything, and they don't need to be points or currency. And maybe if we thought about less about like trying to gain power and more about like how we share with each other and nurture each other, we might get some more people interested in building on this stuff. So that is what we're going to do today. And my thesis is that if we move away from these really capitalist metaphors, we might be able to achieve something that feels a little less capitalist on this technology. So just to quickly summarize before we jump into breakout groups, with Web3, it's possible that your contributions can be automatically acknowledged, meaningful community interactions can be incentivized, and your involvement directly correlates with your decision-making power. So we are about to jump into some breakout rooms and have a think about, have a think about what metaphors we might come up with. They're a little bit more of the world of nature and of the world of kind of these organic structures. So we're all going to jump into this Miro board, and we're going to start by choosing a player. I'm just going to give an example for anyone that's never been in a Miro board before, but hopefully someone in your breakout group has, and if they haven't, I can jump in and help out. So you start by choosing a player. I'm going to pick the acorn because I've literally filled in the answers for the acorn. So example group, here's my acorn, and then we're just going to answer these questions here on the sticky notes. If you want to add another sticky note, you can just pop one on. Wasn't a very effective demonstration. So you can put as many sticky notes as you like, and you've got 15 minutes to try and fill in as many of these questions in your breakout room as possible. So Hannah, if you can get us into breakout rooms, everyone please click on that link and join us in the Miro.
The link's in the chat.
Amazing.
Minna and Abdul, are you struggling? Abdul, Minna, are you struggling to enter the breakout room?
Thank you for coming along.
I believe. Okay. Thanks for coming, Minna.
And how many breakout rooms did we end up with?
One moment. I'm just going to pause the recording.
Great.
So cool.
All right. Do we have everyone? We've shrunk. I think we do have everyone.
Amazing.
Yeah. Oh no, last few. Last few. Wonderful. And we've also got a late joiner. Penny's joined us for the last 20 minutes to hear all your gorgeous juiciness, everybody.
So you won't be unsurprised to hear that we're now going to share what we've come up with in those groups. So is there anyone from group 1 who's happy to talk about what they've been discussing in the community of ants?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk us through what we talked about. And so we chose ants. I guess the main attributes we have with ants is that they're teamwork, but they have tightly defined physiological roles. So bees can change. They've got some flexibility around the role they play. Ants, if you're born with giant jaws, you're going to be a soldier, and that's your lot for life. They communicate through scent, and some of them actively farm. So they take leaves down into their burrow, not their burrows, their colonies, where it like breaks down into fungus that they farm. The way our subjects evolve over time is obviously they create new colonies. So there's expanse. Their process of change is adapting. We noted that they probably haven't changed much evolutionarily in millions of years. However, they have adapted to environments, everything from the jungle to like 20 stories up a block of flats. But part of the way they probably managed to do is because they have perfect alignment. Like for all that there's no centralized control, they all behave. Like no one steps out of line in an ant colony, wherever that line comes from. The way that these changes are visible is like, that expansion, there's that day of the year here where all of a sudden all the flying bees are off. So windshields get blocked up. If you walk through it, it feels like there's a volcano of ant life just exploding into the air, which my partner, who's now forgotten, sorry, right now, pointed out it's a stream of life. What it looks like sometimes is the flows around a building sites. They're either bringing things in or bringing things out. These changes are visual. Sometimes you get like marching ants steaming across a jungle, stripping everything. But that same kind of tendency of theirs has got like a dark side, which is there are these ant mills where if ants at the front start dropping pheromones wrong, they all end up just in this circle that they can't escape. What's needed for the ecosystem for these changes to occur is largely, I'm imagining temperature and daylight changes affect their seasonality and then determine when they do their reproduction. Resource and abundance constraint, like if an area runs out of resource, they will seek out other ones or send out new queens, and the ones that land in areas of resource abundance will do well. The ones without will have to look around. And then challenges in the terrain, which I guess is something like resource constraints, but there's if you get to the edge of a lake, there's not much further that an ant could go. So I realize I've said everything and want to create space for Shikar. Do you want to finish the last one?
What was it? Sorry. What value does your yeah, like largely if you look at life, it's like small fish eating a bigger fish, and like how energy transmits to one life to another in different forms. And yeah, means their goal is basically to expand and like be food for others. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I think what has come through in a lot of what you've described about ants is this idea of needing direction. Like they can swarm and they can create these big visual things, or they can come and clean up soil and debris, but where does that direction come from, which is a really critical, I think, question for these decentralized autonomous organizations. So thank you for bringing that up. Does anyone have any questions on ants, or shall we move on to the second group? Great. I am particularly excited about this one because you have chosen Bimini. Maybe you can see. If you can see Speaker View. Is there anyone from this group who would like to share a little bit about Bimini's ecosystem?
Natalie, do you want to share?
Yeah, I love a chunk. I have a chunk too. I'm so happy it's like a real cat. So 3 of the attributes we chose are unbothered, weird, which I love to embrace, and cozy. And I also in terms of like how did the chunk evolve over time. They're building a kitty community, and maybe Caitlin can talk more about the wisdom thing. And so they become fluffier, and their fur becomes more luscious. And yeah, I don't know if you want me to read the other things, but I absolutely love your pet.
Yeah, honestly, this was a really cool exercise. And we were really intentionally, like, every time we thought of like weird hierarchical, like power language, we tried to resist. And you know, Cozy Cat was really helpful to do that. In terms of the wisdom with the Z there for evolving and changing over time, I think that was just really us trying to think about evolution as something other than like rising up or like gaining more power. So, and because we're weird, it's like maybe it's a type of like collection of like wizardy wisdom. It's kind of where we're going with that. And then yeah, just thinking about the ecosystem, this like needing like comfort and sunny nooks and like tuna snacks was like a really nice way to think about nourishing and like supportive ecosystems and language around that. And then we also really liked rethinking sort of value systems, and we really like our conversation really meandered into the true value of like cuteness in the world, and also balance. So yeah, we're like starting Kitty DAO now, I think.
Amazing. I want to be in Kitty DAO. I can already see how kitties could be amazing tokens that, as you say, get wiser and cuter, and like who decides what cuter looks like? Doesn't matter, because it's decentralized and cute can be different things to different people. So definitely something I'm keen to explore more in the huddle on this topic. Anyone from the whale group still on this call that would like to share a little bit about the whales? The AI whales that don't really look like any particular whale species.
Abdul, do you want to share?
You can go ahead. You are the whale whisperer.
Yeah, so we just spent like a few minutes just sharing our love of whales, and we didn't really get into the exercise until kind of last minute, but it was very easy to find the attributes of old, wise, and big. I feel like the metaphor of the whale is very common and very strong about these like aged animals that persist in time, that don't really evolve much, but are still very resilient, that kind of carry the wisdom from very ancient times and know about the earth more than other animals. About the change, yeah, we a little bit struggled to understand what kind of change we were supposed to talk about. Is it how one individual whale grows up, or how it's changed throughout centuries? Like, we weren't sure. So yeah, we just talked about how solidarity is more and more important for whales, because they have very reduced community, so they were obliged to be very to merge with other communities to stay strong and to survive. And also, maybe one of the particularities of the whale is that they don't change that much over time, like over centuries. They kind of persist, and this is their strength. Yeah, maybe Abdul, do you want to carry on about the ecosystem and how, the other questions?
Okay, so we thought that the solidarity aspect is usually observed by scientists when they dive into the water and observe these animals working together. but also the other aspect of persistence is usually seen by studying, fossil fuels, rather sorry, fossils, by studying fossils. Then what's needed in the ecosystem for these changes to occur is, I guess, stable climate. Okay, then the ocean being resilient, but also going to the overfishing, or I guess, should also is something to think about there. So what values does your subject create? So whales, they usually do population control to avoid other, other species going over to overwhelm the ecosystem. Then it also reduces carbon in the ocean. So that's what we came up with.
Amazing, thank you. I feel like the ants could learn a lot about stability from the whales. There's like a really nice synergy between those two groups. I'm aware that we've only got 2 minutes left, so we'll get into the mushroom, but just before anyone that has to hop off immediately on the hour joins, I'm going to turn all these into tokens, and hopefully Hannah can help me send them all out to you. You don't need a wallet in order to claim one. So hopefully in the next week you'll get a token that has some of these lovely attributes that we've imagined up in them, so we can kind of keep this conversation going. Who from the mycelium group wants to share?
All right, sure. And I think I'm gonna like talk you through real quick. So what attributions do you ascribe to a subject? We think it's organic, connected, collective, and also unique and multiple. And we think it's seasonal and growing on waste, decompose and feed themselves from their own roots. And yeah, about the others should be like ephemeral. I don't know, because it's like a seasonal thing, and it won't last forever, and it becomes a fertilizer in a sense of like unexpected serendipity, discovery, all kinds of stuff. And it's very trivial, to be honest. Like it appears on the surface and then disappear. It's not so visual or tangible, and it has to be like accessibility to resources, environments, nutrition, and opportunities for mushrooms to grow up. And we put nutrition, symbiotic, shape the soil's structure and its bioindicators, and maybe seasonal indicators for the whole ecosystem. But another, like especially I put illusions and also poisonous medicines intentionally on the board, because we think sometimes like mushrooms can be dangerous, use them responsibly.
That is such an important lesson to end this call on. Thank you so much, everyone, for that amazing imagination practice. I can already see how many of these metaphors are more interesting than currencies. All of these metaphors are much more interesting than currencies or tokens, and how they could kind of grow and give back to the communities that they're part of. We're at the hour, so we'll finish here, but hopefully continue this conversation elsewhere.
Thank you, Anna Rose. And I just found that so, even just spending deep amount of time and hearing your reflections on these metaphors for all kinds of purposes, but especially for this one, I just found it really stimulating. I think often we think of something and think, what might be a metaphor for it, rather than just really exploring something and almost going the other way round, allowing it then to make us understand the thing we thought was going to tell us. Do you know what I mean? I love it. I love it. So thank you so much. Our next session is on the 18th of October and is about radically reimagining learning and education. So that one's going to be an hour and a half, and it's back to our normal time in the afternoon in the UK anyway. So do check that one out. And I will be writing up a short blog about this so that you can come and revisit it if you want. Thank you all for coming. I'm really sorry that the first round got cancelled because I was in Cuba and the internet didn't like me being there. But strange things. But it's been great to see you all this afternoon. So yeah, take care and have a lovely evening.